Now the way to do it is another kubectl command, which is kubectl logs. Now in Docker, we used Docker container logs. For Kubernetes pods, we have to use kubectl logs command, followed by the name of the pod, which is KTS pods intro 1. And you have to mention the container name using this -c option, and the name of the container is this one, which is failing Python web page. If I provide the name of the container, I'll pipe it to more so that we can see everything in a single page. Okay. Alright, so it is saying that the Python program failed because it is expecting an environment variable name. Of course, it is expecting because when we launched this container in our local machine, we provided an environment variable with name. The same thing has to be done for the container here also. And we have not passed any environment variable. So how do you do it? I'll show you that. So the way to do it is we have to change the manifest file. Where do you provide the variable? Now remember that the variable is for individual containers, so you have to pass the environment variables for each containers using this option env. So in env, it's an array, so there can be multiple environment variables, but for our case there is only one. So first you mention the name of the environment variable. In our case it is name, and then followed by value. And this is the value that I'll pass Python container inside a pod. So notice this parameter closely. Env for each container. Now I'm not providing the env variable for the other container because it does not expect any environment variable. As container Python web page is expecting, because I have written the Python code such that it takes an environment variable, I have to pass that here in the manifest file. And name is the name of the variable, and value is the value of the variable which you want to pass. In our case, when we use Docker, we used -e capital NAME equal to the value of that variable. Here we are using env and then name followed by the name of the environment variable, and value followed by the value which you want to pass to the environment variable. Let us save this, and before proceeding further, I want to delete the pod because I want to run it again. So to delete a pod, the command is kubectl delete pod followed by the name of the pod. So it is saying that the pod has been deleted. Actually, it is being deleted. All right, the pod has been deleted. Let us go ahead and try to find out whether any pod is running. As usual, no pod is running. So I'll create the pod again using kubectl create command. Pod has been created. Let's see whether it works this time or not. So both the containers are running this time. If you run kubectl describe command followed by the pod name, it is showing you that everything is fine. Both the containers are running. So this is the first container, Python web page, the container ID, image, and the image ID. So the container is running, and we have passed this environment variable name Python container inside a pod. The state is running. Same is the case with the other container also. This is also running. Now how do you test this? We cannot use web browser because pod is not exposed to the outside world. So we'll have to use the pod IP address. So in this case, the IP address is 10.168.1.3, and we have to run the curl command. One pod is running on port 8080, or I forgot, I think it is 8000. It's 80. So this is running on port 80, and the other container is running on port 8080, but it is saying that it is not finding the pod because you have not mapped the container port with any host port. And that is done using something called services, which we'll see later on when we discuss about service. Now a few more commands which we want to discuss is how do you get inside of containers in Kubernetes pods. So in Docker, you run docker exec command, and how it is done in Kubernetes. So for that, what I'll do is I'll run the container again. So how do you go inside of these containers? To do so, we have a kubectl command. Let's say you want to go inside of the container and try to find out what is happening. And the command to do so is kubectl exec. Similar to docker exec, we have kubectl exec. And let's say there are multiple containers. In our scenario, that is actually the case. And if you want to go to, let's say, one of the containers, not both, then you use this command to go inside of any of the containers. kubectl exec id followed by the name of the pod and then followed by the name of the container, similar to logs, but here it is a little different. We are not using logs, we are using exec command. Let's say this is the container I want to go, and what command do we want to run? Of course, I'll be using bin bash. So I'm inside of that container. See, it has changed root at k8s pods intro. Let's see what commands or what processes are running. It should run only Python program. So this is the one, this is the entry point, python2 first, python webpage.py. This is the only command which it is supposed to run inside of this container. And let us go ahead and see inside of the other container, which is http web page. To come out of it, you type exit, and to go inside of the other container, we'll have to change the name to that container, and then I can go inside of that container, and if I type psef, it should show that it is running httpd, nothing else. So this is how you go inside of the containers in a particular pod, and this is how you see container logs inside of pods. I have one pod running. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start or create one more pod, and this time the second pod will contain only one containers instead of two. And this is the manifest file of the second pod. API version is v1 kindest pod. The name of the pod would be k8s pods intro 2. The labels are same, env is training, chapter is pods, and it contains only one container in the specification. So in the containers we have http web page, and the image is coming from Docker Hub repository deepcloud2208/http web page container, and the name of the image is also same with the tag latest. Now let us go ahead and create another pod with this manifest file. The pod has been created. Let us go ahead and see the status of the pod. So both the pods are running. Both the pods have been launched in the same node, in the same worker node. So the worker node 2 has not been used so far. Hopefully if we launch a few more pods, worker 2 would be used. Let's see whether this pod is working or not, whether the container inside of that pod is running or not. And this is the IP of the second pod, and it is running on port 80, and I should be able to get this page, which is perfectly fine. This is the HTML page which has been sent directly using the curl command, and now this is actually the one which I ran in the browser. So two pods are running, both of them are running fine, no problems whatsoever. So let us summarize. What we have done here is we have used manifest file, which contains the deployment of a pod with two containers. We used that manifest file, and then we used kubectl create command to create a pod. Once the pod was created, we saw that the container was not running. So to troubleshoot that, first we tried to find out which container had the problem using kubectl describe command followed by the name of the pod, and then we got the name of the container which was not running. Once that was done, we used kubectl logs command to get the logs of the containers, and to go inside of the container we use kubectl exec command. To pass environment variable, you have to change the manifest file, and you have to pass the environment variables using the keyword env, and then it can be an array. The variable name has to be passed using name keyword, and the value of the variable has to be passed using the value keyword. So that concludes our pod session. So in this pods demo, we have completed all the steps from the beginning to the end. We used the same Docker Hub image to deploy pods in our Kubernetes cluster, which was created using kubeadm.